Welcome back to the afternoon session of the Law&Crime Network. I'm Linda Kenney Baden. When we left, before we talked about the finishing of the closings and we had the attorney press conference, I was in the middle of a discussion with Joseph Scott Morgan, who was answering a question about the nature of the wound on Botham Jeanne and how it showed that the version, shall we say, that Amber Guyger gave could not have happened, that she was just standing there with the gun pointed as in the picture that she was taken in court because her attorneys let her do that. Joseph.
Price here that we use at Jacksonville State. When she's pointing the weapon like this downrange, you're not going to get the same angle of deflection as if it's in this position. And in order to facilitate this, Linda, this shot is actually fired from above to below, from front to rear. And so as this round is traveling downrange, it enters, if everybody at home will kind of place their finger superior to the left nipple area, and that's where it entered, traveling down. It goes through the upper left lobe of the lung, through the heart, and then passes through the bowels, not once, not twice, but literally in and out, creating 4 separate holes, and then lodges in the soleus muscle in the back. It never crosses the midline. It never goes to the right of the nipple, to the right of the navel. So it is traveling virtually on a straight line from above to below. So yeah, if you're talking about firing a weapon straight ahead, this is not the way this happened. She would have to have an elevated position in order to do this. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that that she actually executed him, but the position, she's in a dominant position when this thing is fired. It's an asymmetrical position. And this brings us into a completely different spectrum here when we start to talk about escalation of force and things that never should have come into play here. And I have so much to say about this, but I'll spring the rest of my time.
I know. We also had Katie Smith here, who has not been introduced. She's been sitting here patiently in the studio with me. Katie, when we were here together last Wednesday, you heard the testimony that Joseph just actually did better, I think, than the medical examiner in terms of describing it. You said to me, this sounded to you like an aha moment, it was an assassination.
Right, all this time it's sort of like this accident, but to me it had the hallmark of assassination, not accident. I mean, just because for the sheer fact that her story completely contradicts the evidence, and as our guest explained, she was in a more dominant position. She had to have been standing over him. Her story that he was charging her just couldn't have happened.
It could not have happened. But you know what, I do want to make one point though to everybody. The statement of the attorneys, Lee Merritt and Ben Crump, that there are more cops in the United States that are good than are bad is absolutely true. I've represented both police officers and I've also sued police officers. And it's important, just as in any profession, bad lawyers, bad whatever, teachers, but to get the bad ones off the street and cherish and praise the good ones. So we don't want to make any assumption here, and every time we're attacking Amber Guyger, or the jury's giving a verdict of murder here, that indeed that we're saying that all cops should be indicted. No, we're not. We're just saying on these facts, we believe this jury made the right decision. So that was Amber Guyger on the stand expressing remorse to this jury. Natalie Jackson, all right, I have compassion for everybody, and I think that she can do a lot of good in prison because maybe she has learned something. But this jury found her guilty of murder. The defense got nothing back for putting her on the stand and having her take 2 minutes or whatever she took to say, I'm sorry. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are exactly right. I think that, the fact that she made this whole shooting about her and her sorrow and her fear did not help her at all. And in fact, I think the sentencing is even worse. They probably should have just gone to sentencing right after her plea, and just, I don't know, because this hearing, once you see her crying and then you juxtapose that to all the text messages and social media now in the sentencing, it's got to kind of harden the juror's heart. against her.
Right. Now, Katie Smith, you are sitting here, you go, yes, 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 in the studio. She is a member of a tough unit. They've established that. So when she gets up there and she cries like that in front of the jury, and the jury's heard that she's a tough unit, they've heard, they eventually heard that in the sentencing that she had a prisoner escape from her. Why does it work against her? Because most people would say, why doesn't it work for her?
It's crocodile tears. I just feel like it's not authentic at all. It just feels that way viscerally for me watching it. And, you know, exactly to our other guest's point, she made this all about her, and it sort of kind of calls together all the way that she's looked broadly at the world and that whole incident. It was all about her and the pain that she felt, and it shifted the focus away from this victim. It was terrible.
So let me ask Jeanne Rossi, did the Dallas Police Department, did all her fellow brethren, did her defense attorneys fail her? Let's take the defense attorneys out of this. I don't want to blame lawyers for the moment. They get blamed for everything else. By not saying to her after her first shoot, because the jury didn't hear about that, you should not be a cop. Let's monitor you more because there's something amiss here. Did they fail her by not protecting her and then cause, as a result, the death of both of them, Jeanne?
Yes, and I'll say this. Every police department in America, at the federal level, the state level, the county level, every department has one or two bad apples. I call them Giglio folks. G-I-G-L-O, the I-O, the famous case regarding the credibility of a witness for the government. And they're there in every department because nobody's perfect. I get the strong impression that the prosecutors in this case and the police realized that she had been a problem child for several months and years, and she finally got her due in the sense that she made a mistake because they condoned her incompetence, they condoned her lack of experience, and they condoned her ability to do the right thing. The more I think about it, I don't know who said this, I think it's, Katherine said it may be an assassination. I just crossed the Rubicon on this show. She went in that apartment, she was above him, pointed that gun down, she was angry, and she took his life. And her getting on the stand and crying is not going to take away that impression that's in the jury right now.
So Joseph Scott Morgan, you are the forensic expert on this show, and it's your demonstration that I think just let Jeanne, as he said, cross the Rubicon. It was Dr. Gwynn's demonstration with the prosecutor last year that let her come to the aha moment. When you look at these cases from a forensic point of view, do you give, let's say, if you're involved in a police shooting, the straight story to the prosecutor and say there's no way, for instance, she could have made that shot from her doorway and killed him?
Yeah, I mean, we would obviously, render an opinion and try to be as objective about it as possible. I've worked police-related shootings over the course of my career where the police have taken the lives of others, and equally, I've worked more cases of, dead police officers than I care to remember, and they're both equally horrible. But let me go back to a point here. She never ceases to be a police officer. And moreover, let me go to this. She's on what I refer to as a high-speed unit. This is not a regular beat unit where she is running calls in a zone. She's on what's referred to as a street crimes unit. And they respond to high-risk events. They even go in on high-risk warrants. So I believe that her training should be even examined more closely, and her responsibility should be held even to a higher standard, because these individuals are placed in positions where they have to make split-second decisions relative to what they're faced with, the threat at that moment in time. And in order to de-escalate a situation, just like the lawyer said at the press conference, this is one of those moments where she had the door behind her. Linda, she could have backed out, gone to a barrier position, and spoken into the door, called for backup, and Mr. Jeanne would still be here with us. This is a total abomination. It's a failure in training, and I have no idea what she was thinking at that time, but I can tell you, just because she's off the clock, that does not mean she is not a cop.
Right, and that's exactly the defense try to play it both ways, in my opinion. Make her a cop for the purposes of, oh my God, she encounters these events, she has to make split-second decisions, but forgetting that her training just didn't come into play at all. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the Amber Guyger jury out. There's movement in the courtroom. You have to stay tuned with us. Aaron Keller is up with the Daily Debrief. He will be taking over this chair. I will be with him for the first 15 minutes. We are hoping we see some finality for the victim's family here, Botham and John. He touched everybody that he met. The Daily Debrief next on the Law and Crime Network. Aaron Keller, stay tuned.